A very good afternoon and welcome to Africa Today. I am Udwak Daniel. First, let's talk the headlines. And on the headlines, federal government orders Twitter, TikTok, others to appoint country reps. Still on the headlines, Togo declares state of emergency in the north. Also on the headlines, DR Congo officials accuse Rwanda of invasion. On sports, Usman to defend title in UFC headliner. And now the news in detail. Vice says Africa's developmental aspirations can be actualized by deepening cooperation and collaboration with the rest of the world. A release signed by the Vice President's spokesman, Laolu Akande, said Osibajo stated this while speaking at the opening panel of the ongoing Africa CEO Forum holding in the Ivorian city of Abidjan on Monday, with the panel themed Economic Sovereignty from Ambition to Action. According to Osibajo, the imperative of Africa's economic sovereignty also exists, as there are areas where public and private sectors leaders must continue to strive for it. He further emphasized the need for collaboration between Africa and the rest of the world. Earlier, at the opening ceremony of the forum, President Alassane Ouattara of Côte d'Ivoire commended the initiative of the organizers to bring together public and private sector leaders across the continent and beyond to discuss and develop new paths aimed at boosting the transformation of economies across Africa. The Vice President is also billed to hold bilateral meetings with the Managing Director of the International Finance Corporation, that is the IFC, Makhtar Diop, and the United Nations SG Special Advocate on Inclusion Finance for Development, Her Majesty Queen Maxima of Netherlands. Away from that story, having you know that National Information Technology Development Agency, that is the NITDA, has disclosed that interactive computer service platforms and internet intermediaries are required to fulfill certain conditions in running their services in Nigeria. This is according to a statement issued by NITDA on Monday in Abuja. The statement read in part, NITDA NITDA wishes to present to public of Code of Practice for Interactive Computer Service Platforms, Internet Intermediaries for future review and input. These conditions are stated in the recently released Code of Practice for Interactive Computer Service Platforms, Internet Intermediaries, Online Platforms. The Code of Practice was developed by NITDA alongside the Nigerian Communications Commission, that is the NCC, and National Broadcasting Commission, that is the NBC, with input from platforms such as Twitter, Facebook, WhatsApp, Instagram, Google, and TikTok. What practice is that each online platform is required to have a country representative who will interface the Nigerian authority. This means that Twitter, Facebook, WhatsApp, Instagram, Google, TikTok, and other interactive online platforms are required to have country representatives. Away from that story, Nigeria will begin local production of the uniforms for its military and paramilitary personnel in January 2023. A statement by the Infrastructure Concession Regulatory Commission, that is the ICRC, said the Defense Industries Corporation of Nigeria, that is the DICON, and Sir Corporate Weir Nigeria Limited, that is the DICON SUR collaboration, will have a concession period of 20 years. It is meant to produce uniforms for the Army, Navy, Air Force, police, civil defense, and other military and paramilitary organizations. The Commission's acting Director General, Michael Ohiani, urged all stakeholders in the project to resolve all issues that were hindering the completion of the factory and report back to the Commission in 1 week. The director, in its progress report from the DICON SUR joint venture, is expected to source its raw materials from within Nigeria. At a rescheduled meeting chaired by ICRC's Director of Contract Compliance Department, that is the CCD, Jobson Ewalefo, The commission urged all stakeholders to ensure the project is completed within the stipulated time frame. LFO assured all stakeholders that the ICRC, as part of its regulatory function, would liaise with all the relevant government agencies to fast-track the ongoing process of securing approval for off-takers when production begins in January. When the project fully takes off, it will create 950 jobs and save a lot of foreign exchange. And now to matters concerning ASU and the federal government. Let's have you know that the Academic Staff Union of Universities, that is ASU, has threatened to query universities that have failed to comply with its decision to remain on strike while negotiations with the federal government continues. ASU President Emmanuel Osodeke said this in an interview with newsmen on Monday in Abuja. It would be recalled that ASU had been on strike for the past 5 months to press home its demands. However, since the union embarked on strike, some of its members have pulled out of the ongoing strike to resume their academic activities. Osodeke also noted that since the last tripartite plus meeting called by the Chief of Staff to the President, Ibrahim Gambari, on the ongoing industrial action over a month ago, there has been no other meeting. He also said that the union will be meeting with the government within the week. When we return, news from other parts of West Africa. Don't go away. Welcome back and thank you for staying with us. Always a pleasure to have you. Togolese government has declared a state of security emergency in its northern border region. The measure will last for 3 months and could be extended by the National Assembly, the government spokesman said on Monday. It allows security forces there to have more flexibility to deal with threats of jihadist attacks. The move follows last month's attack in a northern town near the border with Burkina Faso, in which 8 Togolese were killed and others were wounded. Togolese troops are deployed in the north to try to contain a jihadist threat, pushing south from Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso, where militants linked to Al-Qaeda and the Islamic State group operate. Away from Togo, let's head on to Burkina Faso and have you know that the government has announced 3 days of national mourning from Tuesday for at least 50 civilians killed over the weekend in the north of the country. Military leader Lieutenant Colonel Paul Henry Damiba issued the decree late on Monday for the mourning to be observed across the country. On Monday, the government said that 50 civilians had been killed in the attack by unidentified armed men in Saitenga area and warned that the toll may rise. Some reports have put the deaths at 100 or more. During the mourning period, flags will fly at half-mast on all public buildings and all Burkina Faso missions abroad. Celebrations and recreational events are also prohibited for the period. The raid is a major setback for the military government, which forced its way to power, accusing the elected government of failing to address the issue of insecurity by jihadist groups. The conflict, which also affects swathes of Mali and Niger, is displacing rural communities and contributing to a severe shortage of food. We now move to other parts of Africa after this break. Do stay with us. Thank you for staying with us. Still in the news, officials in the Democratic Republic of Congo, that is the DRC, have accused the Rwandan army of invading its territory after allegedly helping rebels take over Bunagana, a border town in North Kivu province. The Congolese M23 rebels took over the town on Monday after forcing some government soldiers to flee to neighboring Uganda. In a statement, North Kivu Provincial Authority said the Rwandan army decided to violate the integrity of our territory and occupy the town of Bunagana. Rwanda has repeatedly called the crisis in eastern DR Congo an internal affair and denied supporting M23 rebels. Its army has not commented on the fall of Bunagana, but in a statement released today, saying tensions between the two armies has risen after they accused each other of cross-border bombing activities over the weekend. In the news as well, Spain's economy minister on Monday linked on Algeria's decision to break a decade-old friendship treaty with Spain that has frozen economic talk and links with what she described as the North African country's increase in alignment with Russia. Speaking in an interview, Nadia Calvino said that in recent International Monetary Fund meetings she has chaired, she noticed that Algeria was more and more aligned with Russia. Algeria suspended a two-decade-old friendship treaty with Spain last Wednesday. The move was seen as retaliation after Madrid came out in support of Morocco's attempt to keep Western Sahara under its rule. Algeria supports the territory's independence movement. On Friday, the EU warned it was prepared to take action to defend the interests of its members. And now into news as well. Head of the United Nations, that is the UN Refugee Agency, has condemned plans by Britain to send a first flight of asylum seekers to Rwanda today. Filippo Grandi said the policy set a catastrophic precedent. He said other countries who took in far more asylum seekers than Britain could decide to follow its example. Courts in London have rejected two last-minute challenges to the new policy. The British government argues that the move is designed to deter people trafficking, but there's been widespread criticism by opposition parties and rights groups. Hundreds of protesters gathered outside the Home Office. Coming right up next on Africa Today is business news. Do stay with us. Welcome back and thank you for staying with us. Time to talk business. You're still on to Africa Today on Hills TV. Recent update on the evacuation of premium motor spirits, that is the PMS, popularly called petrol, by the Nigerian National Petroleum Company Limited, shows that the oil firm evacuated 1.523 billion liters of PMS between May 16 and June 5, 2022, in a bid to keep the country wet with fuel. However, this huge supply volume has not completely eradicated the queues formed by motorists daily in filling stations in Abuja and environs, while many other outlets still do not dispense petrol due to lack of products. NNPC, being the sole importer of petrol into Nigeria for several years, had often described itself as supplier of last resort and had continued to assure Nigerians that it had enough supply despite the queues in filling stations, particularly in Abuja. Away from that story, Nigeria Electricity System Operator, an arm of the federal government's power transmission company, showed that the national electricity grid actually crashed from a peak of 3,703 megawatts to as low as 9 megawatts. Nigeria witnessed widespread blackout on Sunday after the national grid collapsed around 6:49 p.m. before engineers from the Transmission Company of Nigeria, that is the TCN, strived to ensure the recovery of the grid. Reports indicated on Monday and Sunday's grid collapse was the fifth in 2022, a development that made many power distribution companies to shut down their various outgoing electricity feeders. Although no official statement from TCN has spurred the grid collapse yet, it was gathered that its restoration reached an advanced stage on Monday as power generation rose to 2,744.6 megawatts around 6 a.m. on Monday. Nigeria's power grid had collapsed twice in March and twice again in April this year. Power generation on the system had continued to fluctuate due to various concerns such as gas constraints, water management challenges, gas pipeline vandalism. And that's the size of what we could take on business news. Coming right up next on Africa Today is sports. Stay with us.
Good afternoon and welcome to Sport News on Africa Today. I'm Richard Badung. Super Eagles of Nigeria grabbed 3 points against the Falcons and True Pirates of Sao Tome and Principe at the Grand Stade Agadir, also known as Adra Stadium, on Monday. The Nigerian team had also bagged all 3 points in their 2-1 defeat of Sierra Leone at the Moshood Abiola Stadium in Abuja on Thursday. Victor Osimhen scored 4 times to give the Super Eagles a resounding victory in their Day 2 encounter of the 2023 Africa Cup of Nations qualification series in Morocco on Monday. Having pocketed another 3 points, Super Eagles are top of Group A and recorded their biggest win ever in an AFCON qualifier. The Super Eagles' next games in the qualification are against Guinea-Bissau, home and away in September. Away from the Super Eagles fixtures, welterweight champion Kamaru Usman is set to face number 2 ranked contender Leon Edwards in a rematch slated to headline UFC 278 on August 20 from the Vivint Arena in Salt Lake City, Utah. The UFC confirmed the pairing of Usman and Edwards on their official Twitter accounts, as well as during the broadcast for UFC 275. In their first meeting back in December 2015, as part of a UFC Fight Night Orlando event, Usman managed to defeat Edwards with a unanimous decision win over the course of 3 rounds early into the pair's respective UFC tenures. In most recent octagon appearances back in November last year, Usman successfully landed his 6th defense of the welterweight title, defeating former interim gold holder Colby Covington with a unanimous decision win. For Edwards, the Birmingham native has enjoyed a 10-fight undefeated run since his UFC Orlando defeat to Usman 7 years ago, most recently defeating Nat Diaz at UFC 263 last June. In prior titles defenses, Usman, a native of Auchi in Benin City of Edo State, Nigeria, successfully handed losses to Covington twice, George Masvidal twice, and former Sanford MMA training partner Gilbert Burns. Still talking sports, Ivory Coast goalkeeper Sylvain Gbohua has been handed an 18-month ban by football's world governing body FIFA for a doping violation. The 33-year-old tested positive last year for using a banned substance that is a heart medication, which the World Anti-Doping Agency categorizes as a stimulant. His ban has been backdated to 23 December, and he will be free to play again on 24 June 2023. This is one day after the 2023 Nations Cup gets underway in Ivory Coast, with the finals ending. Gbohua was provisionally suspended in December and missed the year's Africa Cup of Nations in Cameroon. His positive test came after a 2022 Africa Cup qualifier against Cameroon on 16 November. Still talking sports here on Africa Today, Australia's winger, our Mabil, said his crucial sudden death penalty for Australia was a thank you to the country that took his family in after they fled Sudan. The 26-year-old scored Australia's shootout against Peru before watching goalkeeper Andrew Redmayne heroically save the South Americans' final penalty. The win in Qatar saw Australia qualify for a fifth straight World Cup, and Mabil completes a remarkable journey from a Kenyan refugee camp to football's global showpiece. Mabil was born in a refugee camp in Kenya after his parents fled conflicts in Sudan, surviving on one meal a day as a child and kicking a ball around to pass the time. And that's your sports news on Africa Today. Back to Udwak Daniel for the rest of the news. I'm Richard Badung.
Welcome back and thank you for staying with us, Boss Richie Badung, for that one. You did well in sports, thank you. Anyways, more stories. Let's have you know the Catholic Diocese of Ondo has fixed Friday, June 17, 2022 for the mass burial of those who lost their lives in the terrorist attack in St. Francis Catholic Church, Owo, Ondo State, on Sunday, June 5th, 2022. The Diocese Director of Social Communication, Reverend Father Augustine Ikwu, confirmed the date of the mass burial to newsmen on Monday. According to Ikwu, the mass burial would take place at the church's new cemetery at Emire Road, Owo. According to the church, no fewer than 40 people died in the attack, while many others sustained injuries. It was gathered that the injured victims are still receiving treatment at the Federal Medical Center, that is the FMC, and the St. Louis Catholic Hospital, both in Owo, and some other private hospitals in the state. However, no one has been arrested in connection with the attack. Meanwhile, Lagos State Governor Babajide Sanwo-Olu has declared a 3-day mourning for the victims of the attack. And that's Africa Today, but before we go, here are the headlines again. We told you that federal government orders Twitter, TikTok, others to appoint country reps. We also told you Togo declares state of emergency in the north. We brought to the fore the fact that DR Congo officials accuse Rwanda of invasion. On sports, we told you Usman to defend title in UFC headliner. Remember to visit us on Facebook at Hills TV, Instagram at Hills TV. Our YouTube channel is at Hills TV. I am Udwak Daniel. Thank you for watching.